Good morning, good afternoon and good evening everybody. I hope you're all well in this mad world at the moment. It's been a while, so I've done a 2-for-1 this time around. Both Matchbox, cars I didn't particularly like as a kid, a 1983 Kenworth Cabover and a 1970 Beach Buggy. So what can I say about both of these? I hated the Beach Buggy. I didn't like the paint scheme of it. I didn't particularly like the way it looked. Again, with the Transporter, I always thought the cars that came with them bundled up didn't seem to fit the scale right. This Sierra, or Merca as it was in the US, always looked out of proportion. They put other cars on, they even put another truck on the back of this truck, and everything just didn't seem to fit quite well with it. So it was always one that I was never particularly fond of, to be honest. But even though some of the branding, like the Pirelli one here, the TYRES one, there was other ones that they did, they looked okay with the livery, but it was just something that I didn't particularly like. So I've tried to sort of come up with what I think would be a more enjoyable Transporter, or one that I would like to put on my shelf. So I've tried to marry up a different car, and as I was going through them all originally, again, there was still nothing that was particularly that fitted it scale-wise. I tried the Porsche, the Audi, tried to keep the Matchbox family going, as you can see here. Different sort of cars from that era, there or thereabouts. And even then tried some more American cars along the Hot Wheels lines with the Camaro. There was a drag car, this sort of funny rat rod thing, which actually is quite cool. I kind of like that. I might do something with that later on. But they just didn't seem to fit well. Well, this one fitted okay, I suppose. But I wanted to try and keep it Matchbox in the family. And then I suddenly realised this Beach Buggy again. If you saw one of my older videos when I did the Baja Buggy, there was a story behind that where I threw this car at the bully, and I actually thought it was this one. And here's the car now. I'll put a link in the description to the video that I did of that one. But it was actually this Beach Buggy that I actually threw at him, and not the Baja Buggy here. It was this purple yellow fleck thing that I absolutely detested. The wheels always snapped on this back axle, so that it was always all over the place, and I was just never really that fond of it, to be honest. But it was actually that car that went over the fence and hit the bully on the back of the head. So watch that video and I'll tell you all about what I'm rambling on about there. So I've decided to go with this one because I think it fits the purpose of this whole Transporter a little bit better scale wise. Again, along the method that I did with the Beach Buggy, I wanted to try and turn an old dog that I hated into something better. So here we go, we'll crack on with it. The first things I've got to do, obviously, is fix this front bumper that I've just showed you there, and do a lot more sort of modifications to make it a little bit more palatable. So I'll start with stripping the paint, and there's a video on that I'll put in the link so as not to bog this already long video down too much. And I've stripped them down, and we can always have a quick look inside and see what's going on. It's always great, this part, because I've seen them for 30-40 years or whatever, so it's nice to take them all apart and see what's going on inside that's been hiding there all this years. So this rear engine, a little bit of damage to it, not too bothered about that. The interior is okay, comes with these little fuel cells either side. This plastic suspension with this notorious back end where they always used to pop out, the axles used to come out of that, and it always used to make them all over the place, and I'll show you that later on and address it. But the windscreen assembly there, and then a little bit of a sanded down body, and a bit of a mistake I made on the bottom when I was drilling out the hole there. That's come through and popped through the bonnet, so I'll address that later on. I'm not perfect, so hey ho, I do make mistakes. I'll show you that later on. Now to the truck. Looks better straight away, although still quite a few things I want to do to this to my likings. But once it's stripped down, they're the standard wheels that went on many Matchbox cars in the day. Very basic, long elongated chrome plated chassis, plastic chassis there. The little exhaust stacks, they're a bit bent, so I'll do something with that as well as we go along. The horrible coloured windscreens, which I hate when they put them on these die-cast cars. There must be method in the madness for that. I'll do something with that later on. And then this plastic bed, which clips in underneath. It clips in during the mid part there and on the rear, which is a little bit fiddly. But I'll just quickly show you, just so you can see if anybody else wants to pop these out. It's sort of a push fit in, just get something sturdy, a screwdriver, or I'm just using a little reaming bar here, just to pop it open, and it should just unclip and slide straight out like that. And that's one big little bed assembly there. But overall, there's no real damage to this one, other than it just needs a few little mods here and there just to make it something a little bit more to my liking. But there's the sum of all the parts, all laid out, ready to get something done. And I'll start off with this cab over, and I need to get the front bumper assembly back together because it's snapped off the front here, and a part of that assembly is it's got the headlights built into that. So I've done a little bit of research on the old Pinterest and Tinterweb, and a lot of the fronts are there's actually quite a big customizing scene, which I didn't realise, for all these trucks as well. So there's a lot of different front ends and big chrome bumpers as well, and there you can just see the lights attached to this bumper. But I'm going to use this one as a reference, just to simply draw a very basic profile around some styrene. I'm not going to do all the cutouts and recesses in this one. I've seen a nice little modified one on Pinterest, which is just a big bling bling chrome flat shiny front bumper, which I'm just going to replicate and put on the front. A, because it's easy, and B, because I liked it. So all I'm going to do is get a 3mm square section and place it either side and bond it to the back face of this bumper bar, so it'll effectively glue in around the existing chrome grille on the front. And there's a few little things I've noticed as I've already planned this out. It's got these little tabs or little bits of extra around the chassis at the moment, and the wheels and tyres, which I'll show you in a short while, which I'm going to put on, is going to foul this. So I think at this stage I'll just saw these off now just to get rid of that and make way all ready for it. So I'll plan ahead, which is quite unusual for me. I know this one has taken me a long time, but for a change I've actually not done it on a wing and a prayer, and actually done a little bit of preparation as I'm going along. So here I'm just going to bond it to the rear of this bumper using this mech solution again. I'll put all the links in the description so you can see them and how and where to buy them. And once you've simply, if you get it right, actually, you don't really have to use a lot of filler on these, just to, you know, fill in the seams, as it like, between the pieces of material. If you get it absolutely cut squared and filed right, once you glue them together, or bond them together should I say, it's pretty much a seamless fit, especially when you come to paint it at the end as well anyway. But there you can just see all I'm going to do is stick it to the front, and I'm just going to glue it now and stick it on. It'll pretty much be nigh on exact replica of the original one, albeit without the little recesses in the front. But as I say, I'm not aiming to achieve that OE look for the original one. So a little bit of a toothpick just to get more precision on the glue, and because I've lost the nozzle of it anyway, because they always clog up and I get annoyed with them, so I just dip a fine toothpick or cocktail stick in there and bond it on. There we go. Once it's all chrome painted, it will be a pretty much exact match at the front when we get to the end. So there's the front bumper bit. Onto the headlights now. I'm not going to build these as part of the bumper. Obviously they did for the original Matchbox one to help with all the manufacturing, but obviously in the real world the headlights were separate. So very simply I'm just going to cut some little 5mm rectangle squares of styrene to make the headlight bases, and once I've done that, a little piece of the 1.5mm round bar cut into little slithers will make the headlights. So I'm just going to quickly round the edges of this headlight base plate, if you want to call it a base plate, and I'll just now cut little slithers of this tube away. Oh, there you go. Disappeared. I'll start again. Here we go. Another little piece of... There's no point even trying to find these things. I've got that much styrene flicked all around the garage. You could probably make another car out of it. But here we go. Just maneuver it into place and give them a very slight dab of the mech solution or plastic weld, and it will be bonded in an instant. Then with a little bit more glue on the front of the casting itself and a quick maneuver in place, and all should be well in the world. There we go, some headlights ready. So we're out of the blocks and we're going along now. Okay, so now we're going to move on to something to do with this side profile. I didn't really like the top of it anyway, but I also didn't really like this side round sort of curve in the base. There's a lot of sharp edges on this car and it's very square and blocky, but I didn't particularly like this round piece, never did. So I'm going to address that bit first. I'll just do a very quick template and of some masking tape, and I'll just do a little rubbing off the side so I can get an accurate little profile to work with. Very quick and easy and simple to do. And this will work with a lot of other methods, you know, when I'm doing my decals. Sometimes it's even worse to try and measure it. You'll be going back into the computer all the time when you're doing them. So you can just simply put the masking tape over and mark out where the recesses are and the bonnet and the doors shut and all the rest of it, and pull it away, and obviously, hey presto, you got a completely different shape than what it is when you're looking at it, because obviously with the contours it all moves all over the place. So quick and easy way to do this is just this bit of masking tape, and I'm just quickly sort of toying with a few different ideas there, whether to go pointed straight up and go in line with this top, I don't know, it's not spoiler, is it? Little wind deflector at the top, keep in line with that, or do I go flat, mimic the bottom? I don't quite know, so hence I'm just having a little bit of a play around with there. But I think I'll go with the pointed up bit and shooting to the top and mimic that top aerofoil spoiler thing. So I'm just going to place it onto some styrene now and cut around it, which is straightforward enough to do. Obviously, being small and fiddly, just take care if you're using a knife. And once you've done it, just remove that masking tape, and as best as I can, I've tried to mirror sort of the square edges and the step up of it, if you like. And once it's glued to the side, we will have, well, in my opinion, a better looking side profile. It's just something about that round. I just never, you know, that round shape. I didn't think it fitted with the whole truck at all. Never did. So here I am, just bonding with some standard super glue again to the side, and this is going straight onto that plastic base part, so this will come apart again as well. It's not glued to the actual casting, it's glued to the plastic base there. So I think one final thing it will need, just to make it a little bit better, is a little beam section put along that rear, so I can put some wheels and tyres in. But there I'm just sort of showing you the little step up. I'll remove that top piece as well, so I'll just quickly put this beam in. I'm just going to use a little L section, just cut to size, bond it in place, and then we can put some wheels and tyres on that and make a little bit more use of that void at the rear of the cab. Here we go. I'll just put these old wheels back in just to show you what I'm trying to do. So make full use of that little transporter, make it look a little bit more real, and I'll put some better wheels as well in there when I'm finished. So, okay, I'll get on to this top piece now. I never liked that. I know that sort of mirrored the front or the roof windows in the cab, but I didn't really like the shape of that either as a kid. So I'm just going to grind that bit down, and obviously doing this, it's made it quite sharp. It's almost made it like a blade. So I'm just going to blunt it down just that little bit more and round off these edges a little bit. I know once I've put a little piece of styrene on the top, which I'm going to glue to it now, you won't really catch your fingers on it, but you know what, better being safe than sorry. So I'm just going to titivate and torque that bit up. A little bit of glue on the top of it again, and bonding it down this little 1mm section of styrene, and we've got a better, well, I think a little better solution to that point. Looks a little bit basic, as they always do in this form before we get to the painting at the end. A little bit of a montage of materials all over it, but there we have sort of that part of the cab, or rear end of it, done. So now I'm going to make a little bit more detail onto the front end of this cab. I'm just going to do some side mirrors out of some little 1mm brass bar, and once I've bent it to size, I will simply measure up where I think it's going to need to go on the door, and I'm just going to scribe in a little hole, scribe in a little point, and then I'll drill a hole with my little hand drill. It's always best to take a little bit more time at this point, because you've only really got one shot to do. Well, yeah, you've only really got one shot to do this. Otherwise you're making a mess and filling holes in, and you're never going to get it right. So just take your time. Doesn't have to be fast, and then make one guiding hole, because the top part will sort of rest against the top part of the door anyway. It'll be a nice tight flush fit, but it still needs the lower part here to at least locate, and something for me to glue the bar in. But it's a very quick and easy thing to do. I much prefer doing these type of ones on vans and trucks than I do on cars, because, well, they had big chunky mirrors. It's a little bit more forgiving really than doing the tiny fiddly ones to get on the side of a car. But again, just a little selection of styrene rounded off with a little dab of glue on, and we can have this side mirror done. And I'm going to actually, I was sort of thinking as I was doing this, I was thinking, well, they've also got some other smaller mirrors on there as well to get in the blind spots. So I'll add a little round section to this afterwards. But for now, here I am just quickly gluing that together. And with a little bit more dab of glue on the actual bar again itself, once I've located and fitted them to the cab, and I'll just add this little incy wincy round piece just to show these little blind spot mirrors added to it as well, and I think that just gives it a little bit more realism to the front of the standard cab. It always looks a little bit clumsy sometimes, I think, when we're looking at this scale, especially when you're now watching it on a sort of HD 4K TV. It's these things are, you know, them little round parts, they're a millimetre, them pieces of tube, but obviously on the screen it looks a lot bigger. So sometimes when I look back at these, I still think, oh, it looks a bit clumsy, but hey ho, we'll move on. Here's the wheels and tyres I'm going to use for this one. I'll put the link in the description. The 3D printed ones from a guy called Kimsil Designs. They do this Gaslands Wargaming roll car game dice thing, which we've got a big following. But the little parts that he does are absolutely fantastic, and he's got a great wheel configurator on there as well. He does all these different types of wheel designs, but the tyres that he does some low profile, big profile, wide wheels. He's got different sizes. Is this configurator, you can click along and see what they look like against a car. They're really reasonable priced, so I'm going to use these for this truck because I think they look absolutely brilliant. So I'll paint all them towards the end, but I'll at least do the axles now and try and get a bit more preparation to this. And although the front's got a locating piece, if you like, at the back they haven't. So I'm just going to sort of help myself out a little bit here and just at least get some places to mount this standard little metal bar and tube. Well, actually, the metal bar is not, it's a safety pin. It's a stainless safety pin, and the tube is, I think it's KC Metals or Albion Alloys. I can't remember. I'll put the link in the description anyway. And I'm simply gonna have the tube, have the tube stuck to the little locator of this C section of the styrene, and then the stainless dress pin will run straight through the middle, enabling it to spin round, and I'll glue the wheels to it at either end, so it'll make it a nice little roller. I'm not going to paint any of it just yet, but I'm just sort of doing a dry fit of it all just to see how it all goes together. But I wanted to at least put the wheels and glue them onto the axles for now, so I can paint them all the same colour at the end. But here we go, a dry fit, how it's all started to come together. I think you'll agree them wheels look a damn sight lot better than the standard ones, and they go some way to looking a little bit more like a truck. But they do fit the vehicle quite well, even though I can't get it to sit straight while I'm showing you, but there you go, it looks a lot better. And you must take a look at this guy. He's got a big huge range, and I'm going to use the same range again on the buggy, so I'll start that now. And there's that hole I did at the front, unfortunately. And all I've done is buff this down. It needs a little bit more work. There's some mould marks I'm just going to make it all a little bit more flush and get rid of to make it nice and smooth. It is an old, wow, 1970, it's 50 years old now. You wouldn't think it, but I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit and get it a lot neater and fill in this front mess that I made. But hey, we all make mistakes. I like a little bit of tiling and grouting anyway, so it gives me something else to do as I'm doing these things. I'm using any excuse, to be honest. I did make a balls up of it, didn't I? So I did a little bit of model fiddle just to fill it in there and let it dry up, and then I'll sand it down. So here's the other selection of wheels from this guy then. So wheels come in different sizes or different widths as well. So I've got some narrow ones from the front and some wider ones from the rear. Different style tyres, and what I'm going to do is address this suspension bar, how it used to mount. anyway on this old car. They were notorious for the axles popping out of the little pins underneath, and obviously you couldn't take them apart like I'm taking them apart now. So once the wheels are popped out of it, they were all over the place, and I had a few cars like this back in the day. So I'm going to make my own little bar to sit on top of that one again, and I'm going to use this little C-section again and just bond it to a bottom of another piece, which will sit sandwiched between. I've done this method before on other cars. It'll just literally sandwich between the chassis piece itself and the interior of the body. So for all intents and purposes, it won't do anything other than replicate what was there before, but just another way to mount it. And all I'm simply going to do, you may notice I always mark these things up F and R as well, front and rear. The amount of times I've come to fit these things at the end and I think, well, they don't fit anymore. And I've got them all completely back to front, so I label everything up as I'm going along now. But here I am, just adding this little bar section, and I'm going to glue it and sandwich it between another. I would have used a square hollow if I had it, hence that's why I've used the two little U pieces just to bond it in place. But there we have a miniature skateboard, which I'm going to sandwich in the middle, and once them little pins are running through that, they'll be able to rotate round, and I'll simply glue the wheels like I did with the truck on the side of that as well. You can just about see there's enough clearance in there, and it'll flex. It'll probably flex a lot better than the original one did, to be fair, but we'll see how that is at the end. But here it is, just a quick mock-up again, dry fitting with these wheels, and already it looks a million times better than that ugly yellow spotted purple thing. There you go, there's a bit of flex in that, and it'll simply sit between this interior piece and the chassis. I'll use some rubber. Well, actually, before I do that, the wheels are a lot wider, the tyres are a lot wider, so I'm going to have to use a little bit of artistic license on the painting of them to give it the effect. So I'll do that at the end, and I'll show you that at the end. But I'll quickly move on to this engine, and I don't really want to put this old one back on, even if I did fix it and repair it. So I've used a donor drag engine from, I think it's called the Diaper Dragger. Yeah, the Diaper Dragger, the Hot Wheels one. And I want to set it sort of mid-engined and get rid of the rear-engined old flat four buggy thing that it had before. So I'm just going to quickly remove the bench seats in this interior and put another flat piece of styrene. Well, I put two pieces in. I made a step on it actually, just to put this engine on. I can use the existing hole that was in the bottom of this engine, drill through the styrene, and then screw it all together, so it will make it nice and neat. But I'll quickly cut off these exhaust pieces just so it can sit inside a little bit, because they're fouling the inside of the car. And once I've just quickly smoothed that down, it's all such a tight fit in there. Some of this you're not going to see again anyway, but it'll fit in there a lot neater now. It just needs a little bit more clearance on the roof line because it's not sitting quite right. So I think, well, I should have put two engines on it. No, it looks rubbish. Yeah, it just needs a little bit more clearance on the front where it's fouling. So I'll just cut into the roof ever so slightly just to give it that little bit more room to move. And I'll just use my little rotary tool here and just drill down on it, or sand down, grind down even, on this area. Just quickly see if I'm getting it straight and lined up. And there we have, yeah, there we have a nice little fitting rear engine. Now it's going to sit inside, quite a bit different to the original, but I'll paint that up and detail that up as well at the end. And as I say, I'll just quickly put a little hole in that and drill it and attach it like so. I'm not going to do any race seats in this one. I'm just going to sort of keep it sort of 70s vibe inside. Little bench seat. But there's a few little pieces on this now I don't think are going to fit well with the overall look of this. One is them headlights on the front, or lower lights. And then this rear piece which will stick out now where the old engine used to sit. So I'm just going to quickly grind these little bits down as well and sort of smooth this off a little bit and get a better look to the overall feel of it. I'll just tidy them little bits up as well. Yeah, and then I'll just quickly remove these Shrek ears off the front. Yeah, there we go. There's just a rounded rear and just smoothed off that front now, so it'll sit a lot neater and just look a lot, yeah, it looks a lot better, that does now. They always bent in anyway, them lights. I didn't think they, well, I didn't like the whole car anyway. Here's me saying I didn't think they suited it. I didn't like the whole thing. So we'll quickly add some exhaust pipes on it, again using some little electrical ferrules and some solder wire glued into place. You're not really going to see how these are going to mount to the engine anyway, so I've got a little bit of leeway on this. I can simply glue it to the underneath of sort of this engine plate because it'll all get hidden. You just see the exit pieces of them. So once I've stuck them in place, you can't really see where they're going to touch that engine anyway. So it sits okay, it fits all right. I'm happy with that. But here they are, both at this little stage at the moment. I want to have a quick breather before we finish off, and I'll just quickly remind you some of the decals that I do. I've done quite a bit more since my last videos. Some of the generic sponsor ones. I added some headlights and rear light sets for the Skylines, which people asked me for, and the Volkswagen Golfs people asked me for. And then I've just added some of the other ones that I've made in these videos, and there were a couple of military and camouflage spec ones and some number plates, race numbers. So please take a look at my decal sets. There will be other products coming soon as well. I'll just leave that little teaser there. So we're over the hump of it now, not long to go. I told you it was a long one, so quickly do some interior work to this. Not a lot on this particular one, of the buggy at least anyway, because I just want to add a couple of dials out of some styrene rod just to make it look a little bit more realistic. But now for this Kenworth Cabover, which never had an interior, it also needs windscreens and glass assembly anyway, so gives me a good opportunity to hack this horrible coloured orange thing apart anyway. Just so happens the bottom of it is used to locate the wheels and axles in place anyway, so I can salvage that bit and at least have a base to put this interior on. So I'll just quickly start by hacking this horrible windscreen off. I've smoothed it down already, but it's a good little piece there, as tight fit as it is, but it's a good little piece to at least have the founding basis, yeah, the foundations on. The foundations on to put this interior. So I'm just going to go quickly through, rummage through my parts box, and I'm looking for some seats. I was going to say wheels and tyres. I'm not. I'm looking for some seats. I don't know what this one was out of, but I can hack off them rear part and that front little dash part, and I can utilise them two front seats and put them on this base, which I've already cut there, as you can see. And once, I'll just use a little bit of blue tack here just to show you where I'm going with this, but and make sure it all fits as well, which it does. So already we'll have a big improvement on a non-existing interior by adding one. And as it happens, where this old glass assembly used to go in, it's got some little internal ribs which I can put a little piece of styrene on to give a rear bulkhead. And with some little magic on this dashboard, I've just used a little L section, cut some holes out of it, some squares out of it even, and added a little angled square piece for the binnacle and a steering column out of, again, 1mm rod, and with a little bit of handiwork for a steering wheel, I've made a very basic dashboard. But there's a lot of things I've got to, well, there's a lot of clearance issues I've got, especially when you put in the bottom chassis on, because it's got the grille part of it which sort of comes into the interior a little bit. So there's a few little clearance problems I've got, but on top of all that, you can hardly see it anyway. It's only because we're zooming in on the camera, but once you've got it in front of you, you can hardly look through the windows anyway. But I know there's an interior there, so there's the sum of most of the parts. The last little bit to do on all this is these stacks, and it's a very quick job. I'm simply going to, not even going to try and repair these ones. I'm just going to cut the tips of these off, add a little bit of solder and ferrules after I've drilled the top of the existing exhaust pieces, and they'll all fit together. So very quickly I'll snap these off, and then with a little hand drill again just make a hole. And I decided I could have put the whole ferrule into this, but I would have opened the hole up a lot more and risked distorting the bit of the exhaust I wanted to keep. So I did a smaller hole, glued a little bit of this solder into it, and then with a bit more glue around that solder wire, just added these silver ferrules on the top just to give it a little bit more realism. So a little bit of excess glue on there, so I just knocked that off with the end of the scalpel blade, and that is the end of all the hard work, at least. So I'll just get onto the detailing of it and painting up, and I've already primed it and added the base coat silver. I'm just going to mask it off and add a little bit of blue. I'm using some Tamiya TS, I think it's a light blue on this one. I've said it many times before, if I've got a rattle can full of the paint, rather than crack open the spray airbrush, I'll use the spray cans instead. So quick first initial dusting of this blue just to show you is all that I've done. I'll give it another coat later on, and then a quick whiz round with the detailing of the interior parts with my Tamiya acrylics, which I don't normally go to and bore you too much with the painting. I think most people wouldn't want to watch paint dry, as it were, but the final process is the decals, which obviously you know that I make, and I have done a video as well to help you along. If you want to take that, I'll put that link in the description as well. And once we're at this stage, I tend to peel off now, pardon the pun, and go into the final unveiling. So quite a lot long-winded this time, but hopefully I hope you'll all like the transformation. So let's have a quick little reminder now of what she originally both looked like. As I said, both of them I didn't particularly like as a kid. Both an acquired taste, and now my little take on the finished articles of the Team Red Bull Transporter. Simply painted this one silver, masked it off with a little bit of blue, and then applied all the decals over it to give it some texture. There's the windscreens that I've made on the front of that one there. You can just about see some of the interior of that buggy, which I'll show you in a minute. I only gave them one coat of the black rubber paint for the tyres, which really set them off. Honestly, these tyres are some of the best I've come across. 3D printed ones. They're absolutely brilliant. The grips in them, they just come alive once you put the painting on them. So please, I'll take a look at them if you're interested. They're really good quality. You can just sort of make up that artistic license I've painted on that rear tyre to make it look like a dished wheel, and I'll show you more of that in a second. And I'll give you a close-up of both of them now. It's a metallic silver as well. There's the better look inside there with the glass. And there's an Autobot Transformer logo on the front there. A lot of the time when I was doing on my Instagram of this build, people were mentioning Optimus Prime, and I wish I'd have done an Optimus and Bumblebee now, but I just did a little nod and a wink towards that and put the little Autobot logo on the front. But here's the Beach Buggy version, and they can just about make them wheels out now. I kept the original glass in the front of this. I thought it was okay. It wasn't too battered and bruised or scraped. I've done some extra detailing there on that engine and just put some cables, some HT leads, ignition leads on that. Wheels and tyres spin nice and freely. And together, so it's certainly a more of an improvement to my tastes anyway than what I remembered them as a kid. Maybe not to everybody's tastes, especially I was never a massive fan of these beach buggies, but I tried to do something a little bit different like I did with the Baja one. Take something that I wouldn't normally like and make it into something I did. And to me, this one, yeah, I'm happy with this one. There's a better shot of them nice chunky tyres on the rear. A little bit of the inside you can just about make out again in that. Over to the cab. And I think that wheel and tyres just fits a little bit better again to my liking than the roundness of the original. And I'm utilising the tyre rack as well. And there's the painted wing mirrors. And connected up. They seem to fit the transporter pretty well, I think. So there you have it. I hope you liked this video, even though it has been a bit long this time. Please continue to subscribe, comment, like, share. Until the very next time.